Yo, what's going on, my people? It's your boy Jwave with another video in the house. We're going to be reacting to another video by Sowell. Sowell talks about how the people that we idolize, like Kwame Nkrumah, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and Jomo Kenyatta, basically, he's saying they're the reason why Africa was not able to move forward. So let's hear this video and get into it.
Newly educated classes have been especially likely to specialize in softer subjects, and to be prominent among those fostering hostility toward more advanced groups, while promoting ethnic identity movements, mobilized against other ethnic groups, the existing authorities, or other targets. In various periods of history, the intelligentsia in general, and newly educated people in particular, have inflamed group against group, promoting discriminatory policies and/or physical violence in such disparate countries as India, Hungary, Nigeria, Kazakhstan, Romania, Sri Lanka, Canada, and Czechoslovakia. Whether at the level of minority activists in a given society, or at the level of leaders of national revolts against external imperial powers, promoters of nationalism have been disproportionately intellectuals, and intellectuals from a limited range of fields. Few nationalist militants were engineers or economists or professional administrators, as a study of nationalism said of the generation of African leaders during the transition from colonial status to that of independent nations in the 20th century. For example, Kwame Nkrumah was a British-educated lawyer, Jomo Kenyatta an anthropologist, Leopold Senghor a poet. Much the same pattern could be found in other parts of the world as well.
Wow, I never actually thought about that. It's very true. Most of the leaders in these so-called third world countries are typically people who are in the humanities. I never even rationalized that. Yo, let's see where he's going with this, because this actually, he might be getting something, getting somewhere that makes sense with this. Let's see.
Leaders of the Basque separatist movement in Spain, and of the Quebec separatist movement in Canada, were also soft subject intellectuals. In the less developed eastern regions of Europe, the rising intellectual class during the years between the two world wars likewise tended to concentrate in the softer subjects, rather than in science or technology, and to seek careers in politics and government bureaucracies, rather than in industry or commerce. As a scholarly history of that era put it, institutions of higher education in East Central Europe turned out a surplus academic proletariat or socially functional employment, because they were trained primarily in law or the humanities. Romanian institutions of higher education were described as numerically swollen, academically rather lax, and politically overheated, serving as veritable incubators of surplus bureaucrats, politicians, and demagogues. Much the same pattern would be apparent decades later in Sri Lanka, which was all too typical of Asian third world countries in having a backlog of unemployed graduates, who had specialized in the humanities and the social sciences. Who would later promote the breakup of Yugoslavia, and the atrocities that followed in the last decade of the 20th century, included professors in the humanities and the social sciences, as well as a novelist and a psychiatrist. The mass slaughters in Kampuchea, under the Khmer Rouge, were likewise led principally by intellectuals, including teachers and academics. Historian A.J.P. Taylor has said that the first stage of nationalism is led by university professors, and that the second stage comes when the pupils of the professors get out into the world.
That is so true, because we see that now. We see that with this new liberal ideology where it's primarily the universities that are pretty much priming the students, right, to be pretty much ideologues, right, and pretty much kamikazes to a certain extent, because they get so riled up about certain topics that sometimes you even think they want to self-destruct, you know?
Whatever the actual sequence, the intelligentsia in many countries around the world have played a central role in promoting intergroup and international animosities and atrocities, and in trying to artificially preserve, revive, or fabricate past glories. Conversely, the historic examples of dramatic self-improvement in 19th century Japan and 18th century Scotland, countries that set out to change themselves, rather than to blame others, concentrated on building tangible skills, such as in engineering and medicine in the case of Scotland, and science and technology in the case of Japan. By contrast, in the 20th century, a whole generation of future third world leaders who went to study in the West seldom concentrated on studying the science, technology or entrepreneurship that produced Western prosperity, but instead concentrated on the social theories and ideologies in vogue among Western intellectuals in academia and elsewhere.
And that is the issue with Africa. We are so involved with the arts, 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 arts. Even translates to social media, where most African content creators are dancers and singers and art related things. Like how, yeah, maybe they might be able to run a country militarily, but like when it comes to actual like prosperity and economic like welfare, like we need game changing people in these positions.
The countries they led after independence often paid a high price in economic stagnation or even retrogression, as well as in internal polarization that turned group against group. Whether in Europe, Asia, Africa, or the Western Hemisphere, a common pattern among intellectuals has been to seek, or demand, equality of results without equality of causes, or on sheer presumptions of equality of causes. Nor have such demands been limited to intellectuals within the lagging groups, whether minorities or majorities. Outside intellectuals, including intellectuals in other countries, have often discussed statistical differences in incomes, and other outcomes as disparities and inequities that need to be corrected, as if they were discussing abstract people in an abstract world. In third world countries whose poverty has often been attributed to exploitation by Western nations, it is not uncommon for those indigenous people most in contact with Westerners in port cities and other places to be visibly less poor than indigenous people out in the hinterlands, remote from Western contacts or influence. In many places around the world, groups who coexisted peacefully for generations have turned violently against one another, when both circumstances and verbally and politically skilled leaders appeared at the same time, creating a perfect storm of polarization. Intellectuals often help create a climate of opinion in which such perfect storms can occur.
Yeah, man, he just taught us a lot that we didn't even know about Africa. See, a lot of our leaders are in humanities and law, and we need more leaders that are actually in technology, in business, in infrastructure, in real estate, moguls, people who actually have a vision for the nation other than ideological vision, because we need game changers, we need movers and shakers. We don't need people who are just ideologically inclined, because of these people will just stay in ideology land, and we won't have any uh, progress in Africa. And that's my opinion, and that's what I got from what he said. If you like the video, please share it with one of your friends. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Like I said, I'm just going to be coming with the bang, man. I'm not stopping.